So does everybody have Microsoft Excel open? Do you have it? So I'm going to click on Microsoft Excel, and it asks you some dumb question. Just say no. Click on blank worksheet, and there you go. All right. So is everybody here?
Yes.
You with me? You with me? Are you with me?
Yes.
All right. You good? So everybody should have page 3 in your lab manual out, and what we're going to do is construct that graph. All right. If you know Microsoft Excel already, fantastic. From my experience teaching this class, at least 80% of students don't know Microsoft Excel coming in this class, so I'm trying to do you a favor and teach you real-world skills. Okay. Any job you do, I really mean this, any job you do in your future career, you're going to use this. Okay, so this is like just essential basic job skills, you know, no matter what you do. Right. So on page 3, if I look on here, I'm going to type in this data into Microsoft Excel. All right, so doing that. So I'm going to do that. Now I'm an maybe overly anal person when it comes to this, but I really prefer to label my columns. And then I'm going to type in the numbers here. Okay, so does everybody have their data just typed in here? Now, just working in spreadsheets, I don't like having my stuff waiting for me here. I don't know. Have you ever seen the movie Dirty Dancing from the 1980s? Have you ever seen that? There's a famous line Patrick Swayze uses. Do you remember what it is? So if you did this, right, if you had your stuff in the corner here, the famous line is, nobody puts baby in the corner, right? So I just don't like putting anything in the corner, because I just obey Patrick Swayze, I guess, I don't know. But there's that famous line, anyway. So I like to leave at least one column, and then at least a couple rows, you know, away from the corner. Now, you might notice that the numbers, when you type in things in Excel, if it's 0.0, it automatically cuts off the 0.0. Do you notice that?
Yep.
All right, well, here's how you fix it. All right, so you have these numbers here, and over here, up here, you've got these two icons. All right, so you should be in the Home tab, and you have these two numbers, these two icons right here. You see where my mouse is moving around? You can click on one of those and then the other one, and you can adjust the zeros. All right. If you left click and drag just one of those columns, you can add another 2 decimal places, which is what you see in the actual lab manual. Did everybody find it? So I got these two little icons. Did we find those, where you can adjust the zeros? Yeah, the column on the left is only 1 decimal place, but the column on the right is 2. So you can select one column of data and adjust those, and then the others. Is everybody all right? Any questions? Okay. How you doing? Alright, fine. Alright, cool. Oh, okay. You cut off your this one, all that, and then the other one. There we go. But that's fine. Yeah, you're good on that. Because you have to select, only select the data you want, but don't select, only cells that have numbers in them. Only cells that have, okay. So if you only want one decimal place, if you only want one decimal place for these, only select those. There you go. And then, there you go. Now it's exactly like. Okay. All right, moving on to the next part. Now, I like doing stuff like this too. This is just my own personal preference, but if you click on alignment, or if you just select these columns, so notice when I move my mouse, when I move my mouse here, I have this down arrow above all the columns. So I'm going to move all these, and I like to just make sure that these are all merged to the text. So just to show you where I got this, so it says your alignment, and there's a little arrow at the corner. Okay, I can find that. And I'm just going to say wrap to text. All right, and that what that does is it allows me to shrink these columns a bit, and then just move my columns down. Also, if you want to center your data in the cells, there's all these little boxes up here. Alright, so you can center your data in these boxes. So let's just say we're going to use this table in a report. Alright, you can select the cells you want. I'm just going to get all little fancy, smanchy here, whatever you call it. I can do all thick bottom border and all thick bottom border again to do that. If you didn't quite catch this, don't worry about it. I'm taking a recording of it so you can watch it over. So basically these boxes up here let me center text in cells, and then this little icon here lets me choose what I want to do. Alright, so I just have to select the cells. But this is just aesthetics. Okay, it's not like mandatory to do. What is mandatory is doing a graph with this. So if I want to make a graph, what I have to do is select the data I'm going to graph. Alright, so left click and drag, and then I'm going to go to another tab up here called Insert. And what I'm going to do is click this little arrow, and you have some options in here. Notice how when I move my mouse over this option, I can choose to connect the dots or not. See that? So some graphing options will automatically connect the dots. I want you to pick the option that does not connect the dots if the graph is linear. Alright. Alright, this graph looks kind of linear, right? I mean, it's a little bit kind of curly, but you could probably draw a straight line through it. So I'm going to pick the non-connecting dots, and there's my chart type of chart. Alright, instant replay. Alright, instant replay, select the data, go to insert, go to charts up here, click this arrow, and select that chart type. Now for me, I don't like all these grid lines, so I'm going to click on them and press delete on my keyboard. Alright, I just don't like all of these. I like things to look simple, not complex. Because think about it, if you're reporting scientific data to somebody who's not of a science background, you want it to look as simple as possible. Here's another thing. How do we put in axes? So as long as I'm clicked on the graph, not out of the graph, but as long as I'm clicked on the graph, notice how up on the tabs up top here it says Chart Tools, there's Design and Format. You go to Design, and then you go to Add Chart Element, and you scroll down to Add Axes Titles. Alright, I'm going to add a primary, and I'm also going to add a vertical axis. Notice how these boxes pop up. And notice how like the words here are kind of close to the axes. This is just my preference, but I'm going to go ahead and shrink the actual graph and then go ahead and pull the axes words away from it. Okay, so it looks nice. And then if I click in there, I can type in the axes title that you see in the page 3 here in your lab manual. It says volume. And this one is mass in grams. So you can move your mouse onto any one of these blue dots in the graph. And notice it tells you Series 1.5.0. So this is 5.0 on the volume and the 4.99 on the mass. Okay, so clearly it's graphing mass. Okay, actually, yeah, it might need to be flipped. Alright. So how do we flip these numbers? Like what if you want to flip these? So you gotta change the axis, right? Alright, this is definitely helpful for you to see. Okay, so click in the graph again. Notice how it has the data kind of highlighted here that it's using. You go to this thing here, switch row and column and select data. You go to select data, and this menu pops up. Alright, I'm still in the Chart Tools Design tab. Alright, select data. And you go to edit. Alright, and the X values need to be the volume. Alright, maybe this way. So it should be mass over volume. Actually, this is right. Okay. But if it wasn't, let's just say it had the other data selected, you would want to select that. Alright. Alright, and you can go into this little box here as well. Alright, change these Y values. But I'm going to cancel because apparently I don't need to do that. So going back to what I was saying before, if I move my mouse on that point, X value, Y value. Okay. Volume in the X axis, mass in the Y axis. So does everybody just have a graph with axes labels? Let me walk around and see. Playing with the font there. whoa, no, you got like a black background there. You could do that, but you have to, yeah, it makes it hard to view though, like, I don't recommend doing that, but I'm not gonna tell you how to artistically make the graphs.
Oh, how you put the music story?
All right, you're doing pretty good. Some classes, they're even trouble with this. Okay. How do we make a trend line from this? So notice how the graph on page 3 has the equation for the line with the r squared. Let's do that. What I do is I right click on one of these data points and this menu pops up. But you could also do this in the design tab and add chart element in. Alright, you can add a trend line from here as well. Alright, so I'm just going to go linear, but there's more stuff I want to do, so I want to go to more trend line options. Alright, and all these options pop up on the right hand side. So I want a linear line, and I'm going to display the equation on the chart as well as the r squared value. And I also want to show you something else that even more experienced users might not know. You can extend this line backwards more, okay, or forward more this way. Right. So if you want to see how that's done, there's this little thing called forecast, forward or backward. So I'm going to go ahead and say forward another 5 units on the x-axis. So another 5 mils on the x-axis, and then another 5 backwards. And the graph automatically readjusts. I kind of don't like this negative value on the y-axis. Maybe we should only do this backwards by 4. There we go. That looks better. You can also, there's also some other menu items up here. So for the line color, let's just say you don't want a blue line. You can go to blue and change it to black. Right. I'm okay with blue, but you can also adjust the width of the line. Right, the 2 point, 1 point. You can change it from a dash type to a straight line type. All kinds of options. This was all accessed from up here, up in these menus, and then from the format, from the trend line menu from the add chart element. So from that I got all this stuff. Now notice how with the line, it doesn't necessarily connect all the dots, but it kind of goes through all the dots. Alright, and so in looking at the data, it looks like it's linear. And notice how, if I go back to the home slide, I can increase the size of my font here a bit. So a straight line has to form y equals mx plus b, right? So I have that form. Question?
Your forecast points disagree.
How come what?
Your forecasted points, they're not appearing.
No, so when you forecast, it doesn't add more data points to the graph. It just plays a hypothetical game of what if there were points there. So when you say forecast, when you tell Excel to forecast in one direction or the other, it just takes the overlying trend that was already there for the initial fit. So it takes the initial fit and just stretches the line out, assuming that the behavior holds, okay, in either direction. But you are not adding data points to the data set. But it's a, you know, you don't need to do it on this graph per se, but you will need to do it on another graph later on in this exercise. And so I just wanted to show you how to do it. All right, questions? Any questions? Yeah, I mean, it's okay. If you have that, it's not the end of the world. All right. Any other questions? There's also, on page 4 in your lab manual, it talks about the title, axis labels, and tick marks, and tick mark labels, and a figure legend. All right. Now, what I usually do is, I mean, you can add a title in here if you want, but what I usually do is I'll just copy and paste this graph into a Word document and add a caption underneath. And that's how you're supposed to, according to the classic MLA format, add a figure into a text. Okay, so I usually don't add a title here because I put a caption once I put it in Word. Let me show you how I do that. So let me just open up a Word document. So Word 2016 or Word. And blank document. So what if you want to copy and paste this graph into Microsoft Word to write up a really beautiful looking lab report or actual published journal that's going to be published in a legit journal, right? So you can, what I do is I just delete this out, I delete the title out. And make this bigger. Actually, before I'm going to do that, notice how the data doesn't go past 25 on the volume. So why do I have up to 35 here? You know, I don't need that. Same thing with the x-axis. What I can do is I can also just click on the axis and right-click on it. This is how it's done on a PC at least. Go to Format, Axis. I'm going to make my maximum 25 instead of 35. And speaking of tick marks in your lab manual, notice how if you scroll down here in this menu, right, if you go further down, you've got tick marks. Okay, and if you add, it says here none, inside, outside, or cross. I usually like to put mine outside. And then the minor type, you can add those two. I'll put them outside. So if you go back to the top here, you say major units, major is 5 and minor is 1. That means that if you look at the major units, it goes 0, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. Those are the major unit increments. And then the minor ones just go every 1. So if I click out of this menu now, okay, and just zoom in on this axis, see these little marks here? Okay, these little tick marks. Alright, these little marks. So these major ones go down a little bit more, but the minor ones are a little bit shorter. And they go from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, you can make a graph look really nice that way. And notice how they're outside. If I pick inside for the tick marks, the tick marks would have gone up into the graph instead of out. That's a good way. So again, to do that, you right-click on the menu, you right-click on the particular axis and go to Format, Axis, and then that whole menu pops up. What if you wanted to, now for the volume, that was one decimal place, right? But what if it was more than that? If you click on the number, you can change the decimal places too, but you don't need to in this case. By the way, anyone know how to zoom in and out on a screen? Just hold the control key on your keyboard and then use the mouse to scroll in and out. I'm going to do that on my my y-axis too. So I'm going to right-click, format axis. I'm going to make my maximum only 25. Why am I picking 25? Because I can see the data only goes up to 25. So the whole point is to have the graph take up as much room as possible and not look like you've got a little graph and a big thing, big border on that side. Looks weird. And again, scroll down, tick marks, major type, outside, major type, also minor type outside, and then click out of there.